Hello.
Pumped.
And welcome back to Behind the Streams. This week, the post was called The Conflict of Being in Conflict. Pretty deep. Now, as you probably ask yourself every week,
what is this place?
From what tree did I pluck the topical fruit from this week?
He took the idea. He saw it ripe on the tree.
Well, I can tell you that I was out on a bike ride on Sunday morning trying to think, what am I going to write about tomorrow? And I was listening to some music, and a song called Oh General came on by Ten Benson. And amongst the first couple of lines, there's a line that says, "Tell me of conflict." And I was like, bing, fruit.
He plucked it and he put it in his pocket.
I will pluck that from the tree, the word conflict. Not so much about the song, which had to do with the general and war and conflict in that regard, I guess.
Horror has a face.
More this idea of if you write stories, if you're into script writing or any kind of story, really, you will know that stories should have conflict.
What if a writer is attempting to create a story where nothing much happens?
If you want your story to be interesting, there needs to be some kind of tension there, which you will get from conflict. The struggle between two forces.
You write a screenplay without conflict or crisis, you'll bore your audience to tears.
They typically identify 6 types of conflict in story. You can Google this, but I'm saving you the trouble of having to Google it. The 6 types of story conflict: character versus self, character versus another character, character versus nature, character versus the supernatural, character versus technology, and character versus society. Me being me, I thought, well, really, all of those scenarios exist within me. And I am in constant conflict with myself, self to self, good versus evil, Janeen versus Janeen. But I could probably write a dialogue between the two Janeens.
Janeen's been working on these very hard.
That held some conflict in it, Janeen fighting against Janeen, but also kind of alluded to some of those conflicts as a way of saying that it is kind of necessary to keep yourself interesting.
If you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life.
At least to yourself. There's nothing worse than being bored of yourself. That's it. It's that simple. What else have I written here? So whether you think there was tension in this week's post, the conflict of Janeen v. Janeen, whether you think that's successful, whether you think there was conflict resolution at the end, I don't really care. I have no conflict about that within me. I got it out. It's published. It's there. We can move on.
Until tomorrow, I'll just keep moving on.
Let's pluck some fruit from the piece itself. So I get right into it. You know, the short bolded bits, Janeen, that's the kind of mean one. I think that's the evil Janeen. The one that has all the "you suck" kind of verbiage that goes on in my head. And the other Janeen is the optimistic one. I am quite an optimistic person in general, and I'm quite good at sort of levelling out my battle between, is it the id and the ego? Who knows? Who knows these things?
This one was invented by a writer.
I totally just ripped off that line. You asked me of my conflict. I am both protagonist and antagonist within myself. I get things done, but I also fight against myself to get the things done. Pretty simple. There's no Shillelagh Law in the kingdom of the self. Shillelagh Law, I put a little link to some shillelagh facts. A shillelagh, if you are unfamiliar, the shillelagh is an Irish fighting stick made out of a specific kind of wood. There's a big knobby end on it for like whacking people in the head with it. It says, at various times throughout history, Irish people have followed codes of conduct which govern their behaviour when fighting. In the Irish folk song Finnegan's Wake, the no-holds-barred rules governing the faction fight which takes place during Tim Finnegan's Wake are referred to as Shillelagh Law. The guidelines?
What is fun without the rules?
Here's a couple. If a faction is greatly outnumbered, members of the more numerous faction must join them in order to even out the sides. How civilised is that? Oh, this is 10 against 2. You can have some of our guys. Like, how do you... It reminds me of Anchorman for some reason.
No touching of the hair or face.
No attacking of one man by more than one man. If one man unfairly attacks another man, his own faction will attack him. The weapons used should be evenly matched, sticks versus sticks. No striking of women, even if they strike you. That's the basics of Shillelagh Law. If you want to watch the gangs of New York, there's some pretty good Irish stick fighting in that. It's brutal.
This is you, right here.
Aren't you proud of me for not trying to do an Irish accent? I had to squash all urges.
The green flag of Ireland.
Basically, I went straight into this idea of conflict. You am I, you beat me down. I tell myself to stay down, but I keep getting up. So there's a lot of boxing terms in there. You know, it's bloody and teeth are loose and there's just a lot of violence. Petroleum jelly dabbed on my delicate eyebrow to stop the bleeding. But I continue on. I am both hero and villain in the ring. It's true. This movie has no clear resolution, yet we dread the end credits, the fade to black. Who are we directed by?
No, it's getting better and better each time.
Protagonist and antagonist in the movie that has the conflict, but when you look at the credits, who is the director? Well, you're also the director. Protagonist, antagonist, and director. This is, in a word, convoluted.
That makes no fucking sense.
Evil Janeen says, and the timeline sings of injustice and bloats and bleats against our cosmic ceiling. The timeline's still rolling, pegs its seconds to our wire. It's interesting to me. It won't be interesting to anyone else. One of the initial approaches I was going to do was tell me of your conflict and then tell me of your struggle, tell me of your pain. I was going to do it sort of like a hard rain's going to fall.
What did you see? My right side.
Weirdly, I'm wearing a Bob Dylan shirt, which I've only just realised matches what I'm saying here. Okay, so if you're having these paragraphs that are tell me of this, tell me of that, and then good Janeen answers the question, then you'd need a wrap-up two-liner that's exactly like, it's a hard rain's going to fall. So I started writing, and the timeline sings of injustice and bloats and bleats against the cosmic ceiling. The timeline's still rolling, pegs its seconds to our wire. And that was going to repeat all the way through. And then I just didn't like it. I didn't like how it started to write, but I did like the idea of using that thing twice in the piece, which I did. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's boring.
I am bored.
There's no conflict in me telling you this. I had a conflict within myself about whether I should totally rip off the structure of Hard Rain's Gonna Fall because I love Bob Dylan. And then I decided, no. Then there was no conflict in that decision because I ended up with something completely different. Just plucking things from trees everywhere today. Licking at our pain receptors like summer popsicles. Is it weird that I sometimes pull out the lines that I just like?
You're weird.
I like that one.
You're a weird guy.
There's a paragraph there about I struggle mightily with these I've been left behind feelings. The group has moved on while I got distracted. This is essentially about the conflict between art and commerce. You want to make things, but you also want to make money.
Give me some money.
And then Evil Janeen says wildlife, which is like wildlife, but it's having a wild life. And we're still in the nature here where I'm talking about weather systems because that is also character versus nature, like all of the disaster movies you have. I want to say Sharknado. That's the one I thought of just then, Sharknado. Ugh.
Claudia, move!
Poseidon Adventure would be one. Any of the big disaster movies about the earth, just weather systems. What is that, the Last Day one where New York freezes? I don't know. And still we worship at the thunderhead. We keep going back. And then we get towards the end and it's like, okay, this conflict is happening between me, myself and I. Is there a resolution to it? Of course, you keep going on. Nothing really ends. The resolution is that you continue despite everything, despite the conflict, despite the difficulty, despite how I'm constantly fighting with myself. Together, we are a partnership. It's balance, really. It's not fate. Just keep logging the hours into the big book of life. Oh, philosopher Janeen in action here. Towards the end, I get into tropes, I guess, or some of the plot devices. There are no three witches foretelling anything. That's Macbeth, obviously.
What are you?
We do not pluck out our own eyes. That's Oedipus. plucking out his peepers, gouging them. He married his mum, you know. Weird.
I will gaze no more.
There are no vampires in our life that just want to be loved. Sexy vampires. I mean, I think we've had enough of them. I haven't seen a sexy vampire thing in a long time.
A goat.
The timeline's still rolling pegs at seconds to our wire. You think of our life as being a clothesline and you're pegging up your life events to it as you progress through your life. And then the double meaning of, and it all happens on our watch. Literal time and on our watch. You know, you're keeping the lookout.
My watch is ended.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is another week behind the streams. Let me know if you're enjoying these. Who knows what I'm going to write about next week? Let's find out then, shall we? Let's find out together.